10 hottest Hercules actors, their scandals, secrets, and shocking truths. What if I told you the strongest men on the silver screen weren't just swinging clubs and toppling pillars, they were carrying secrets big enough to shake a studio? If you grew up on Saturday matinees, muscle magazines, or those late-night sword-and-sandal marathons, this one's for us. We remember when heroes looked carved from stone, and a single raised eyebrow could silence a crowd. But behind those granite chests were risks, reinventions, and a few shocks the gossip columns missed, including one man who quietly turned down a role that went on to create a global icon. Tonight, we're counting down the 10 best Hercules actors in cinema history, from the classic bodybuilders who made the role immortal, to the television phenomenon who turned myth into neon bright spectacle. And yes, this countdown is all shoulders and sun, tunics short, sleeves missing, muscles doing the talking. Stay with me, because each entry adds a new layer to the legend, and the final two might stir a few old debates in the best possible way. But that wasn't the whole story. Ready to start the climb from number 10? Number 10, Mickey Hargitay. Remember those late-night creature features where everything glowed in Technicolor, and the hero's smile was as big as his biceps? That was Mickey Hargitay's Hercules. Bold, bright, and built to entertain. The former Mr. Universe didn't play a brooding demigod. He played the kind of strongman you and I grew up cheering for. Good-natured, affable, and fearless when the rock started flying. Opposite his real-life wife, Jane Mansfield, he turned the loves of Hercules into a whirlwind of muscle, glittering costumes, and playful danger. There's one shot. I know you remember. He squares up to a snorting bull, locks those arms, and wrestles it down. Pure showman bravado, the kind that made drive-in crowds holler. He'd crush a gate, crack a grin, and make the impossible look easy. That's why those nights stuck with us. Hargitay kept the myth fun. What I love is how human his Hercules feels. No tortured speeches, no gloom. Just a capable hero who laughs, lifts, and gets the job done. It's a reminder of an era when spectacle didn't apologize for being spectacular, and when a demigod could be both mighty and approachable. But the sunshine didn't last forever. The next Hercules would swap carnival sparkle for hard-edged swagger, and step into the role with a past that started far from Olympus. Number 9, Gordon Scott. If you remember when Saturday afternoons meant jungle vines and matinee thrills, you already know this face. Before he picked up the club, Gordon Scott swung as Tarzan, discovered poolside, handed a contract, and told to suit up. When he moved to Italy, he traded the jungle for marble halls and stepped into Hercules with that same clean-cut American confidence our generation always trusted. Scott's Hercules wasn't camp or cartoon. He looked you in the eye, then moved a mountain. There's a steadiness to him, broad-shouldered, measured, almost gentlemanly, that makes the wildest set piece feel believable. In one film, he's wrestling cult fanatics. In another, he's rescuing a city like it's just another day's work. The camera loved the way he stood his ground. Feet planted, chest high, no fuss, no roar, just resolve. What gives his story heart is the road he took. Typecast in the States, he reinvented himself overseas, found new life in the peplum wave, and proved you could start over without losing who you are. For those of us who watched these pictures when tickets were pocket change, that persistence still hits home. Scott's legacy is quiet but solid, less flash, more fiber. He's the Hercules you believe would help you lift a wagon from the mud, then tip his head and say, "Glad to be of service." But grit was about to get louder. The next strongman came up the hard way, and when he hit the screen, the earth felt like it moved under his boots. Number 8, Dan Vadis. He didn't pose like a statue, he came at you like a brawler. If you caught those Saturday night sword and sandals on television, you remember the dust, the grunt, the sense that something heavy just slammed into the ground. That was Dan Vadis. Broad as a barn, thick through the shoulders, he played Hercules like a man who'd done a hard week's work and didn't mind doing one more day. Vadis brought a rough charm to the role. Less pretty, more practical. He'd wrench open iron gates, hoist enemies like sacks, and make every stunt feel like it weighed what it looked. There's a moment that stays with me. He plants his feet beneath a chained portcullis, shoulders it up while townsfolk duck under, legs trembling, jaw locked. No flourish, just grit. The sets were painted, and the dubbing was what it was. But with Dan, you believed the lift. There's a blue-collar honesty to his screen presence that our generation still respects. Fewer speeches, more results. His path to the movies wasn't polished either. He started as a showman, paid to display real strength before he ever hit a soundstage. Fame found him in Italy, where those peplum adventures were cranked out fast and fierce. And then, just as quickly, the trend faded. Off-screen, life got harder. He left us far too soon. One of those good men who ran into a bad mix and overdosed before his time. It stings to say it even now, but the mark he left is clear. Vadis proved a Hercules could be human, tough, tired, and still standing. And yet, strength can also be quiet and guiding. The next Hercules didn't just lift stones. He lifted up a generation. Number 7. Reg Park. Some men look strong on screen. Reg Park was strong in real life, and you could see it in every slow, certain step. We remember those posters in the barbershop and the magazine covers at the newsstand. Broad chest, heavy shoulders, not a trick angle in sight. When Park took on Hercules, the bravado disappeared and something steadier showed up. Calm power. No flailing, no showy rage. Just a man who knew exactly what he could move, and moved it. That composure made the fantasy feel honest. A toppled column wasn't a miracle. It was Tuesday. Park carried himself like a gentleman and fought like a workhorse, which is probably why young lifters around the world pinned his photo to bedroom walls. One teenager in particular took notes. He'd go on to win Mr. Olympia again and again, and he never forgot the Hercules who lit the spark. That's a legacy most actors never touch. What I appreciate at our age is his balance. Park kept his feet on the ground. He trained hard, treated fans kindly, and left the chest thumping to others. On screen, he gave Hercules dignity. Off screen, he gave a generation direction. But quiet strength has many faces, and the next time Hercules strode in, the muscles came with a modern shock that turned marble myths into headlines. Number 6. Peter Lupus, Rock Stevens. You might first picture him in a black turtleneck, wordless and unshakable on mission. Impossible. That same steel carried straight into his Hercules. Billed as Rock Stevens, he looked like the marble statues we used to see in encyclopedia photos. Broad, clean lines, not a wasted motion. He didn't chatter. He did. Gates came off hinges. Villains went airborne. You watched because you trusted the strength, not the special effects. His screen presence had that 1960s confidence our generation recognizes. The job gets done. Then the man steps back into the crowd. Off-screen, he had a knack for headlines. Long after the peplum craze, he shocked a lot of living rooms by posing for a women's magazine, then later surprised everyone again by setting a late-life weightlifting endurance record that sounded like something out of a circus ledger. Call it audacity. Call it showmanship. Either way, he kept proving the frame wasn't just for show. Lupus's Hercules feels like a bridge. Old-world heroism meeting modern celebrity. The armor may be studio leather, but the resolve is the real article. He's the quiet kind of strong that doesn't need to be announced, but raw strength can take unexpected turns. And the next Hercules on our list made a choice few saw coming, trading battle cries for arias and shocking fans in a completely different way. Number 5. Mark Forrest. He looked like a Renaissance statue that decided to breathe. Born Lou Degny in Brooklyn, he was barely out of his teens when Europe called and handed him a sword. On screen, he became Mark Forrest, bigger than life, light on his feet, and fearless in a way you could feel through the frame. He didn't lumber. He launched. One moment, he's vaulting onto a horse. The next, he's dragging a portcullis like it's firewood. The costumes might have been studio leather, but the strength was real. What set him apart was control. Forrest carried himself with a calm you and I recognize. The poise of a man who knows exactly what his body can do. He played Hercules and those brother heroes with different names, always giving us the same promise. The fight will be clean, the lift will be honest, and the danger will come with a smile. That's why those weekday double features stuck. You trusted him. And then he surprised everyone. At the height of his fame, he walked away from the arena and trained his voice. The strong man became a baritone, trading anvils for arias. It sounded impossible until you heard it. That choice tells you everything. Discipline is discipline, whether it's lungs or lats. He kept teaching and singing long after the floodlights cooled, a reminder that muscle and music aren't opposites. They're twins. He left the screen on his own terms, which is rarer than people think. A clean exit, a second act, and a legacy that still feels sturdy. But not every Hercules stepped off, set, so untouched. The next one took the blows himself, built the stunts from the ground up, and made every impact ring in your seat. Quick pulse check, friends. Drop your top 3 Hercules picks so far. No peeking ahead. I'm curious where our crowd is landing at halftime. Number 4, Brad Harris. You could hear the impact when Brad Harris hit a wall, because half the time he really did. Before the credits ever called him Hercules, he was the workhorse who built action from the ground up. Stuntman, fight planner, the fellow who made sure the boulders looked heavy and the falls looked honest. When he headlined The Fury of Hercules, you felt that background in your bones. No fuss, no preening. Just a square-jawed blonde who kicked a door off its hinges and kept moving. Harris brought a different rhythm to the role. Clean, clipped, workmanlike. He didn't play Hercules like a prince. He played him like a foreman who'd seen tougher days and still showed up early. There's one beat I can still hear. He breaks from a cart, plants, and drives a shoulder straight through a timber gate. The crack is more carpentry than soundstage, and the wince he gives after tells you he took some of it for real. Little moments like that are why those matinees stuck. You trusted what you saw because the man doing it trusted his training. Offset, he stayed industrious, building a career across genres, tinkering with fitness gear, always finding the next hill to climb. It's a modest legacy, maybe, but mighty in its honesty. The job was done right, and the audience got their money's worth. But sometimes myth takes a wild turn. Glitter, lasers, and a feat so outrageous, it's still a punchline at the video store. Number 3, Lou Ferrigno. If you watched television in the 70s, you remember the green paint and the roar. Lou Ferrigno didn't just play power, he lived it. 2-time Mr. Universe, rival to Arnold, he carried that same mountain of muscle into Hercules 1983 and turned myth into pure 80s spectacle. Neon caves, thunderous synths, creatures that looked like they escaped from a model shop, and Lou standing there, calm as a cliff face, ready to throw down. He played Hercules the way our generation likes its heroes, straight, steady, and larger than life. The famous moment? He hurls a raging bear so far, it becomes a constellation. It's outrageous, yes, but tell me you didn't grin the first time you saw it. That's the point. Ferrigno embraced the wonder. No winks, no apology. Just a big-hearted demigod battling the impossible with a jaw set like granite. What deepens it is the man behind the muscle. As a kid, he struggled to hear the world, and he fought his way into it anyway, gym by gym, set by set, until millions recognized that profile. There's courage in that climb. You can feel it in the way he plants his feet before the hit. He's not playing at strength. He's remembering what it took to earn it. Ferrigno's Hercules is the bridge between matinee myths and modern fantasy, bold, bombastic, and strangely sincere. And after all that glitter and thunder, the legend takes us back to marble and sunlight, where a homegrown Italian hero reminds us how classical the character can feel without a single special effect. Number 2, Kirk Morris. If you remember when weekend television meant sand, sun, and a thundering drumbeat, you've met Kirk Morris. He wasn't imported muscle. He was Italian to the core, a Venetian whose build and bearing made him look like he'd stepped down from a fresco. On screen, his Hercules had that cool, classical poise our generation always admired. Shoulders squared, chin set, strength delivered without noise. He didn't need to growl. He simply was strong. In those lively peplum adventures, he moved like an athlete, not a showboat. Tight footwork, clean lifts, a measured tempo that made the impossible feel grounded. When he crossed paths with other legends, trading grips with Samson, plotting with Ulysses, you could feel the old myths wake up. The stories were big, the budgets weren't, but Morris gave them dignity. That's why those pictures linger. They feel like postcards from an era when courage, loyalty, and a steady hand were the whole recipe. What I appreciate now is his restraint. No vanity tantrums, no false bravado, just a handsome, iron-backed champion who made marble look warm. He brought the Mediterranean sun to Hercules, and, for a few wonderful years, kept the genre shining. But myths don't just glow, they blaze. And one final Hercules set the fire that every other strongman chased. Number 1, Steve Reeves. This is the face that started it all. Before capes and green screens, Steve Reeves walked onto a 1958 set and made Hercules feel real, not just because of the physique, though every line looked chiseled, but because of the way he moved. Calm, precise, like a man who knew the weight before he lifted it. For many of us, that first wide shot, sun on bronzed shoulders, a smile that said the danger was already handled, was the moment myth stepped off the page. Reeves brought GRAC to brute force. He didn't snarl, he didn't showboat. He made toppling pillars look like a choice, not a trick. That dignity changed everything. Overnight, the sword-and-sandal craze exploded, and every theater seemed to echo with drums, horns, and cheers. Kids tried his poses in the mirror. Grown men asked their barbers for the Hercules haircut. Studios scrambled to find the next him, and never quite did. Off-screen, he stayed stubbornly himself. He guarded his health, pushed a clean training ethic, and turned down roles that didn't feel right, even some that later became legends. When a shoulder injury and typecasting narrowed the road, he stepped away with the same poise he showed on camera. Horses, fitness, a quieter life. No scandal, no speeches, just a man content to leave a perfect imprint and let it speak. What lasts for our generation is the standard he set. Strength without bluster, heroism without hurry. You can watch 100 imitators and still feel the difference when Reeves strides into frame. He didn't play Hercules, he defined him, but that wasn't the whole story, because the legacy these men built didn't end with the credits. It followed us home, changed how we trained, and still shapes how we see heroes today. Conclusion. So what did we really watch across 10 men and a lifetime of Saturdays? Not just muscles, we saw styles of strength. Mickey Hargitay gave us Technicolor joy. Gordon Scott brought steady American resolve. Dan Vadis swung like a workhorse and paid a hard price. Reg Park stood unhurried and lifted a generation with him. Peter Lupus proved quiet power can still surprise you decades later. Mark Forrest showed that discipline sings, on a stage as easily as in a gym. Brad Harris made every hit honest. Lou Ferrigno turned myth into 80s thunder and never lost his heart. Kirk Morris kept the marble warm and dignified. And Steve Reeves, he set the bar everyone else still reaches for. Now your turn, friends. Who's your Hercules? Do you think I missed your favorite? Tell me in comments, or name your top 3, and tell me which modern actor you think could wear the sandals next. And if you enjoyed this journey, stay close. Next time we're diving into the most controversial sword and sandal moments the censors tried to bury. Till then, keep smiling.